Thanks for joining us. Common sense response to the progressive narrative. Today we will be discussing immigration, which is something of an issue today and suddenly became an issue for Democrats yesterday.
Well, that's due to the reckless actions of these Republican governors who are endangering us all by sending illegal immigrants or asylum seekers
Let's
to
get our
sanctuary
language
states
right.
and sanctuary cities.
So, first of all, I'm Rich Rostron, and I have with me today
Eric Syverson.
welcome to our show. I'm glad you have chosen to join us. So apparently, immigration became a hot topic for the Democrats yesterday. This is in spite of the fact that the immigration czar, Vice President Harris, kind of came within binocular range of the border once. Is that what I understand correct? She could see it with binoculars. That's close enough for some people, I guess. But
Well, now Governor DeSantis has moved the border to, within blocks of her house, so that's why it's become a problem now.
well, I don't think that's why it became a problem. I think it became a problem because the pollsters for the Democratic Party suddenly realized that this is an issue that seems to matter to Americans. Americans seem to care about this. And there's an election that turns out 27 days from yesterday, I believe. So they've got an eye on that election, and they're getting warning signs from pollsters about, hey, this immigration thing isn't working out real well. So we'd better do something about it. So our illustrious Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, that bastion of truth and honesty. Sorry, I almost choked. She came out and was in a press conference talking about this yesterday, and I believe you got the ability to let us take a look at this?
Yes. Let's see here if I do this right.
Well, I believe that we have to have a secure border, and I think that we are trying to address, the president has a plan to address that. Securing our border is part of our security, to protect and defend our country. Let there be no doubt. I don't respond to those kind of questions.
There's no doubt. Biden's top priority is our security and securing our border.
And he has a plan. I like that. I put it. Didn't he have a plan for inflation?
Yeah, we have the Inflation Reduction Act to fix that.
Yeah, but even the Democrats are admitting that had nothing to do with inflation, and really won't improve the situation with inflation at all. How about the supply chain? Wasn't I told that he had a plan on how to fix that?
Are you suggesting that there's something wrong with our supply chain? And that we're not just in such a booming economy, and that's why, inflation is what it is, because the economy is doing so great?
I must have missed something. I don't know. I must have been sleeping for the last couple of years.
Should we keep listening to Nancy and see?
Sure.
Hear some of her wisdom.
Let's go back to...
With all due respect, I'll respect to your question at the end, but not to his comments, because I don't even know what he's talking about, and I don't know if he does. But the fact is that we have a responsibility to secure our border. We also have a responsibility to recognize the importance of newcomers to our nation. Right now, the best thing that we can do for our economy is to have comprehensive immigration reform. We have a shortage of workers in our country, and you see even in Florida, some of the farmers and the growers saying, why are you shipping these immigrants up north? We need them to pick the crops down.
We need them to pick the crops. I mean, who else is going to do it? We have a shortage of people. We need new immigrants to do that. What would we do without them?
Well, is Nancy willing to go down there and help? We can get her a basket.
Yeah, she's very busy.
Yeah, but she could make it a junket. Take some of her staff with her, and they could all get baskets and go out in the,
Be a great photo op.
Yeah. So.
Here, but that doesn't mean that we don't recognize our moral responsibility as well. When the president, the former, occasional occupant of the White House who proceeded.
I'm sorry. Gee, that must be painful for her to admit that.
The name that shall not be uttered.
It's that like Voldemort. It's he's not there to tear up his papers anymore. I don't know. I pity her that.
Yeah, back when Obama was in office and somebody would say something negative about him, you'd always hear from the left about how you're supposed to respect the office and respect the occupant of the office. And she's showing such respect for the office there.
Selective respect, I think, is what that's called. But
President Biden, when he had the ban on Muslims, everybody came forward. Our military, our diplomats, our faith community, and one part of the faith community, the evangelical community of America.
That's a lie. That was not a ban. It was never a ban on Muslims. That was a ban based on regions that were considered to be not by Trump. I said that name. Sorry, the name that not shall not be mentioned. Prior to his coming into office, these were identified as areas where we had to worry about terrorists, and that's what he did. And that they blew this up as he's anti-Muslim. It's a lie. It offends me, which means she shouldn't be allowed to say it, because anything that offends me should not be allowable. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They came forward and said the refugee resettlement program of the United States is the highlight of our humanitarianism in our country. It is. We have a responsibility to accept some of these people, but we have to know that they qualify for that. And what the administration is doing is increasing how we make sure that people come into their country in a timely fashion are either here to stay or not. But protecting the border is our responsibility. We all know that, and that is something that we will work on. And again, my suggestion has always been to have the adjudication of some of this at the Guatemalan border before people pay coyotes billions of dollars to risk their lives coming across Mexico and maybe turned away at the border.
So it's billions of dollars. These refugees with nothing are paying billions of dollars to be brought across Mexico. And so now we should be getting involved in securing the border, the southern border of Mexico now.
Wasn't that the he who should not be named policy? Wasn't that something in fact, I heard, aren't they going to have the wait in Mexico thing, and they're going to be restarting again now?
I don't know, but she said that's always been her position.
Really?
That's what she said.
Well, she must be telling the truth, because God knows Nancy Pelosi has never told a lie. And how's she doing with her stocks, her and her husband right now? Better than picking oranges.
We must secure our border. 2, we have a moral responsibility to accept refugees. And 3, our nation is great because we are a nation of immigrants. But don't take it from me. Listen to Ronald Reagan. When I quote Ronald Reagan to my Republican colleagues, he doesn't get any applause. Can you imagine that? Not even Ronald Reagan, who has really said America is preeminent in the world because we have a constant flow of newcomers to our country. And when we close the door, we will be diminishing our preeminence in the world. Don't take it from me. Go to Google, look up President Reagan's last speech as President of the United States. This is the last speech I will make as President of the United States, and I want to communicate a message to a country that I love, and go from there. Yes, sir.
So if we go from there.
Yeah, you have a portion of that last speech talking about immigrants.
Yeah. So he continues on to say, "It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago. A man wrote me and said, you can't go to live in France, or you can go to live in France, but you can't become a Frenchman. You can go to live in Germany, or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or a Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American.
I support that wholeheartedly.
Sounds great. I don't know why any Republican wouldn't be cheering for that.
I think they're not cheering because of the way she's
delivery.
misusing it. She's abusing those words.
And so
I love Ronald Reagan, but the fact is he signed a law that was going to a comprehensive end to immigration. We gave 5 million immigrants in this country during the Reagan administration were given status to stay in the country. Many of those people have become citizens now, and that's a wonderful thing. But it was supposedly this was going to end the problem. It didn't. The problem has continued to grow. If anything, it fed the incentive for this problem because there's a sense that someday we'll do the same thing again, but on a broader, larger scale.
And so Nancy was talking about how, our preeminence is because we accept immigrants. And I think she needed to continue looking at Reagan's speech and listen a little bit further, because his very next sentence says, yes, the torch of Lady Liberty symbolizes our freedom and represents our heritage, the compact with our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestors. It is that lady who gives us our great and special place in the world, for it is that great life force of each generation of new Americans that guarantees that America's triumph shall continue unsurpassed into the next century and beyond. Other countries may seek to compete with us, but in one vital area, as a beacon of freedom and opportunity that draws the people of the world, no country on earth comes close.
Right.
It's the freedom and opportunity that make America great. And that's why people want to come here, not just because we accept immigrants.
But when somebody comes here illegally, do they respect us? I mean, when I was young, I had somebody tell me, if you don't respect yourself, nobody else is going to respect you. And the way that the left is attacking America, we're a bad place. Is there any reason for somebody coming to America to say, well, this is a great country and I'm happy to be a part of it and I want to participate in what has made this country great so we can continue to make it great? That's not the message they're getting from the Democrats today. Based on the message we're getting from the Democrats today, we should shut the borders entirely. No legal or illegal immigration until we figure out who the heck we are. I hate to say it, but that right now, based on the conditions, political and social conditions in this country, we have no right to be taking anyone in. And what's the purpose of bringing us in? I saw a video, I am unable to find it again, of Joe Biden talking about how this illegal immigration, I don't know if he used that term, was bringing black and brown people into the country. And he said this is a good thing because we're going to change the demographics of America. Well, I don't care about the demographics of America. What I care is if the people come into this country are going to make good citizens. Are they going to support liberty, what Ronald Reagan was just talking about there? Because otherwise, it's a question of whether the immigrants will be a blessing or a curse. And with what attitude that we have in this country today, it's inevitably going to be a curse.
Yeah. So when she was talking about Ronald Reagan's last speech as president, when I went looking for that, I just assumed it was his farewell address. So I found his farewell address, and I found, because I didn't think that was in there. So that was another speech he made a couple days later. So a couple days before that, in his official farewell address, he had a couple of things that I think Nancy really needs to hear. It's common sense told us that when you put a big tax on something, the people will produce less of it. So he cut the people's tax rates, and the people produced more than ever before. The economy bloomed like a plant that had been cut back and could now grow quicker and stronger. And he also said, nothing is less free than pure communism. So she needs to look at some of Reagan's other speeches from that week.
You were talking about the term asylum.
Yes.
What were you saying about? She mentioned the refugee resettlement program and asylum seekers.
So the American Immigration Council has a good explanation of what asylum means in the United States. So I start off with, what is asylum? Asylum is a protection grantable to foreign nationals already in the United States or arriving at the border who meet the international law definition of a refugee. The United Nations 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol define a refugee as a person who is unable or unwilling to return to his or her home country and cannot obtain protection in that country due to past persecution or a well-founded fear of being persecuted in the future on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. Then Congress incorporated this definition into U.S. immigration law in the Refugee Act of 1980. And I looked up the Refugee Act of 1980. That is word for word what is in there as a definition of asylum. So then when you talk about asylum, you have three different ways that somebody could be an asylum seeker. You have the affirmative asylum, where they come to the border and say, hey, I need your protection, protect me, I'm a refugee. That's what we typically think of for an asylum seeker. You have the defensive asylum, where somebody is detained and is going to be deported, and so they use the fact that they are of one of those protected statuses and that they would be fearing persecution if they were sent back, and they use that as a defense against deportation. And now the Biden administration has created a third class, and it's the expedited asylum. And so instead of it being the year-long process of the affirmative asylum, they are meeting these asylum seekers at the border, informing them that they are asylum seekers. And instead of that year-long process, they've got a 14-day process to vet them and to grant them status as a refugee.
And so to what degree do you think we're adhering to this actual standards of asylum seekers in what we're granting in this country?
So specifically in the situations we're talking about, these refugees that are being bussed up and flown into these sanctuary cities, they are refugees coming from Venezuela.
Yeah, that inhumane treatment that
Yes. On private chartered jets into Martha's Vineyard, yeah. So those asylum seekers are asylum seekers here from Venezuela. So Venezuela, since 2013, nearly a quarter of their population has left as refugees.
And most of them have come here.
Well, they're scattered all throughout Latin America, and a lot of them come in through Texas and Arizona, or get on a boat, come in through Florida. Have you heard about any wars going on in Venezuela? Or them going out and recently, killing their political opponents or throwing them in jail, or any of the things that would meet those definitions of asylum?
Not necessarily. I do recall in the past that some of the political opponents were having some personal risks. So I mean that I forget the guy's name who was running against the current leader of that country, trying to get elected. He had some reason possibly that he should have come here as an asylum seeker, but
not in general the citizens.
No, that's not my understanding.
Yeah.
No.
And so the reason most of them would cite is why they're fleeing is because they're seeking economic opportunity. Because Venezuela has no economic opportunity right now because it is a socialized country, and there's no opportunity. Even though it's a country that is rich in natural resources, has all sorts of things going for it, as far as the ability to be a great nation. They were a booming economic engine back prior to not their current president, but their one before, who decided he was going to implement all these social programs. They were a booming economic...
This is a lesson that we should be paying attention to, what happened in Venezuela.
Yeah, they were a great economy. They, people were immigrating to there in incredible numbers because of the economic opportunity there. And then something changed, and that change was all political.
It's funny, you were talking about the people that are being shipped up north.
Yeah, so we got some headlines to go with that.
Oh, this is awesome.
We've got migrants bused to sanctuary city Chicago are promptly shipped off to suburbs. Suburban mayor says he was unaware migrants bused to Chicago will be moved to his community. Or this one here. This one is another round of migrants arrive in Chicago. Florida joins Texas in sending them to sanctuary cities. And then we got the real story behind DeSantis migrant flights to Martha's Vineyards.
The real story?
Yes, the real story. It's the New York Times.
Well, then it must be true.
They've got the real story. So, DeSantis, this evil Republican governor from Florida, was using a former counterintelligence agent from the federal government. She just retired in August, sending her to Texas to round up some of these asylum seekers from Venezuela and to put them on chartered jets to Martha's Vineyard.
This is after or before Biden was putting migrants onto jets and flying them into cities in the middle of the night.
PolitiFact fact-checked that one, and they said, that some of the flights may occur at night, but that's just because they're cheaper.
Oh.
So that one's untrue. It's just because the flights are cheaper.
In spite of the one security guy that was sitting there talking about how this was I forget where that was, in Ohio or something, or Pennsylvania.
So
maybe.
if we are going to have a refugee resettlement program, it would make sense to spread the refugees out rather than have them all in the border cities, right?
Well, I don't know. You've got 17,000 according to the story I was just looking at. And I'm sorry, I don't recall where that was. 17,000 asylum seekers in New York City. And that's going to cost them $1 billion this year. That's quite a hardship, isn't it?
That is. That's expensive.
So what is 5 million asylum seekers coming into Florida, Texas,
You're using
Arizona?
one of those questionable conservative sources for that
Am I?
number of migrants.
Well, that's as I understand it, that's the number since Biden took office.
Yeah.
This year it's over 2 million is what I understand.
Yeah, that's but the left would deny that that's the number. They would say it's a much smaller number.
Is it less than 17,000?
No.
That's, there's little doubt that there's a flood.
Whether it's
And speaking of floods,
17,000 or it's 5 million or it's 1.9 million, really doesn't matter. If we've got that many illegal immigrants coming across our border, we've got a problem.
Well, we already have border security now, don't we? I mean, haven't the drug cartels taken over and the smugglers taken over that security problem?
They're protecting it for us. Making
They're
sure
making
that they're safe
they're
passage.
making a fortune off
So
this. Fighting wars. I was just seeing a program yesterday where there were two groups of these cartels having basically an armed battle like army. These guys are dressed and equipped as if they're in armies, fighting each other on the south side of the border over control of who gets to ship the asylum seekers. That's going to be my special. That's the word for the month, I think. Asylum seeker.
So I've got an article here. It's from ABC News. It was from September 16th, and it's Martha's Vineyard lawmakers weigh in on DeSantis flying migrants to island. And so it addresses that question of the cost of these asylum seekers. So the person doing the interview says that DeSantis said that you guys talking about straining the system to house all these people, to feed all these people. There's the same complaints that the southern states have. And that the border states, like you guys, are getting a small taste of what we're dealing with. You guys have a couple dozen now. We're dealing with thousands and thousands across the southern border. And so the guy who they're interviewing is the state rep for Martha's Vineyard. His last name is Sear. And he said, unfortunately, we've seen these fundamentally racist and xenophobic tactics before. If this were about providing relief to border communities overwhelmed or about providing safe harbor and care to these migrants, the way that you do that is by reaching out in partnership to other states and localities. There was none of that outreach. So when the New York and Chicago and Martha's Vineyard, when they complain about the cost, that's because the Republican governors have created a problem. When the Republican governors complain about the cost, it's because they're racist.
Well, it must be true. I don't know why, but it just must be.
So they're clearly just racist. That's why they would complain about the cost. And so the cost to New York is because the problem that the Republican governors created, the cost on the southern border is just racism.
As it always is. It's fun to play the race card.
Yeah.
I think we should have a game where we're looking at all the places where it is played with such consistency.
And so these cities are complaining that They're not complaining about the asylum seekers being in the country. They're not complaining about the refugees seeking that protection. They're complaining about the Republican governors who are sending them north with no notification. So what did Chicago do when they had busloads of migrants coming up from Texas?
They shipped them to a suburb, wasn't it?
Yes, they shipped them to Elk Grove Village and Burr Ridge.
Aren't these cities sanctuary cities?
Yes.
Although Chicago's got a pass because it's a sanctuary state. They could send them anywhere in the state and they're still in the sanctuary.
But Chicago is also a sanctuary city.
Double sanctuary.
Yeah, so they're
so it's
protected all around.
sanctuary on top of the sanctuary.
Yes.
So they should be double safe there.
And so I've got an article here talking. It's got a quote from the from Dick Durbin.
Wait! I'm sorry. I just did double safe in reference to Chicago. That is a little bit ridiculous. I apologize.
So Dick Durbin said the fact that they would turn them loose in the city of Chicago, for example, without any warning whatsoever. Families with small children were literally dumped at the train station in Chicago by the governor of Texas. It's coming from Dick Durbin. Like, can you imagine releasing people into that war zone?
That is crazy.
That sounds inhumane.
It does. Maybe they should do something about the crime so it's not such a war zone.
But so what disadvantage do they have coming into the borders of Chicago that they didn't have when they crossed the border in Texas? I'm assuming they have more resources now than when they crossed the border in Texas, because they have been in Texas at least for some period of time, potentially weeks, and now are being moved up to Chicago. What resources did they lose in being moved to Chicago that they didn't have, or that they had when they crossed the border? It's the same situation that the border states are being faced with.
Yeah, the entire thing is laughably wrong. It's for them, for these people in these northern cities who have promised sanctuary, to be complaining about the few numbers, the small numbers that they're talking about, compared to what the southern states are dealing with, is a joke.
Yeah.
It's, and then the asylum seekers. These are all good people. I know Trump pointed out that there might be some bad people coming over, and it was assumed therefore by the left that he was calling all the immigrants these things.
Yeah, therefore they're all terrorists.
Well, I'm not saying that all the illegals are terrorists, and we've got new numbers on that. Yeah. The numbers have jumped dramatically since Biden came into office.
Well, I would venture to guess that that's because the process has gone from being a year-long vetting process to a 14-day process. So, unless the government has just gotten that much more efficient now that Biden's in office, maybe they can process it in 14 days instead of a year.
Well, I would venture to say that they've caught most of the terrorists as these were not people that were coming over the border and turning themselves in, which a lot of the asylum seekers, I understand, are doing that.
Yeah.
They want to come over the border. They know that they're going to be welcomed here. They know that they're going to get benefits. They're going to, and so they come over the border and they try to find somebody to turn themselves into as quickly as possible. Whereas a terrorist might be reluctant to do that.
Yeah, not be in the system.
Right. So the number of terrorists that they caught, that's how many they caught, I would venture to guess, who were among the attempted getaways. So the ones that we've caught, that's only a portion of those who have gotten away. And if I think the number was, 69% or something that were caught at the border of the general immigration numbers, the other 31% being getaways. Yeah. I would suspect that the number of getaways amongst terrorists is higher. Now you also have your drug traffickers. You've got child sex slaves, sex slave trafficking coming over the border, gang members coming over the border. These are not all savory people that we want to have here, and it's not as if. Well, I mean, I guess it's not so bad because we don't have a crime problem in America today, do we?
Not in Chicago.
Not in Chicago.
We don't have a problem with gangs. We don't have a problem with crime. We don't have a problem with drugs coming across that southern border.
Well, it's nice that if these people do commit a crime, that they won't have to worry about bail. That's a nice thing.
And then they can be let out, without bail, and then they can leave the state and police won't be allowed to pursue them under the new Safety Act.
What's her name? Ness. Her first name.
Suzanne Ness.
Suzanne Ness has just come out, and she's pushing for changing. I read today she's pushing to change fentanyl and heroin from a felony to a misdemeanor. The highest killer of Americans, the age 18 to 45, I understand, by far, is fentanyl overdose today. We personally know somebody who lost his son this year to fentanyl. This is not a joke. This is, and we're making, and this is the attitude about it.
The state of Illinois is increasing. I don't know if the bill has passed yet, but they're going to increase the amount that you can be in possession of, where it would be a felony versus a misdemeanor. I think is probably the bill that she's supporting. But the small amount that you're allowed to be in possession of now is enough to kill 500 people.
Well, we've got more than that. We can afford it. I understand we've had enough fentanyl coming into this country to kill every single American several times over.
Yeah.
But then the Rolling Stones just came out with an article that we're trying to ruin, the Republicans and conservatives are trying to ruin Halloween by warning people about possible fentanyl, which is disguised to look like candy.
So where's that fentanyl come from?
I believe it comes from China.
It does.
Manufactured in China. Well, why don't the Chinese just send it straight here?
Because it's regulated.
Where, at the border?
They can't legally bring it in.
So they illegally bring it in. So
they sell it legally through the system that they can purchase it through in Mexico, and then they illegally run it across the border into America.
If this is the number one killer of people Americans 18 to 45, isn't that a national crisis?
You would think.
I mean, shouldn't we be like all hands on deck stopping the inflow of fentanyl into this country? And how are we going to do that when the border is wide open? Nancy's talking about we must have a secure border. She's all for that now. It seems to me that I was watching the 2020 Democratic debate, and the one question was for all of the candidates was whether they supported an open border. And if I recall correctly, they all did. Am I wrong on that, or did Joe fluctuate on that? Or?
I don't remember his answer on that one. But his policies and his actions in public life would seem to show that over the last 40 plus years.
Right. She's criticizing America that we're going to shut down the immigration. I don't think anybody reasonable is attempting to do that. I want people to come here legally. And if you want to increase the number that are allowed to come here legally because it's reasonable to do that, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
When she's talking about comprehensive immigration reform, what type of reform is she talking about there? What do we not have in place that she would want to put in place that would fix the problem?
Well, I think comprehensive immigration reform would mean that, kind of like one of our previous podcasts here, talking about Amendment 1 in America, in Illinois rather, it would cement these people into the country on a legal status. So future administrations, future Congress would be...
that would be dealing with those who are already here, but what could we change in our immigration policy for those who are coming into our country that would solve this problem of the asylum seekers, and how do we vet them quick enough to be able to get them integrated into society? And then should there be some sort of way that we integrate them into the society, or should we just put them up in a hotel in Burr Ridge?
Well, I think the first thing, if you're asking me what I would reasonably actually do, is that I would find an actual honest-to-God standard for what does it mean to be an asylum seeker. And I understand that, the immigrants are being trained. They got lawyers training the immigrants on what to say. But there should be a process that should narrow the number of people coming in for true asylum seekers dramatically, because they can't all be asylum seekers.
Yep.
If there's this many asylum seekers coming over our border, then the answer is not for them to come here. The answer is for them to take up arms against the country or the people in their country that are threatening them.
Like the right of the citizens to keep and bear arms might be important.
Might just be. You know, and that is one of the things with this is it's like a relief valve on the pressure cooker that should be occurring where there's oppression. You know, if the people, well, I can stay here and fight for my rights, or I can go to America.
If a quarter of the country's population has left in the last 7-8 years,
They're
a major problem, but it's not a problem that's going to be solved by jumping across the border into America.
Well, and going back to the asylum seeker thing is once a Venezuelan is out of Venezuela into the next country, haven't they escaped? Haven't they found their asylum in the next country? Why does asylum extend across borders up into the United States? Or does it just go north, in which case they should be going to Canada?
Well, they only go so far north. They've got to stop in those red states. They can't come up to Chicago.
Cold. It gets too cold up there. I can understand that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go. I don't want to live in Canada either. I don't like winters
or
in
Illinois.
Illinois already. So it's that's understandable. But
so basically the crime that these Republican governors are being accused of is one, using government resources for a political stunt. But they are doing, like DeSantis is using funds that were set aside for moving asylum seekers north that were approved by the legislature. Maybe not in the way that the legislature had intended, but that's what those funds were for. He's using them to send them north. And then they're accusing them of sending them north without notifying the people where they were going. So then the busloads show up in Chicago. And I've got another article here that's it's another ABC article. And this one is from September 19th, and it's getting they interviewed the mayor of Burr Ridge, where Chicago had sent these busloads of migrants to. And it's as we sit here today, right now, I have not gotten an official word from the city, from the state, or Cook County. Burr Ridge Mayor Gary Grasso told NBC5 Thursday in an interview. In a statement, the village of Burr Ridge confirmed it received 64 refugees Wednesday, which were transported from the Salvation Army Shield of Hope in Chicago. The refugees were ultimately assigned to temporary hotel housing in Burr Ridge.
What, doesn't Burr Ridge and the mayor there appreciate surprises?
Yeah. Apparently the mayor of Chicago can't be surprised, but the mayor of Burr Ridge, send them there. Don't even tell them. Just send them there and drop them off at a hotel.
Well, that does fit with, what was the guy in Martha's Vineyard, the rep there, Sear or whatever.
Yeah.
He was complaining there was no notice.
Yeah, there was no notice. It's the same thing that Chicago was complaining about, and Dick Durbin was complaining about, and our wonderful governor, Pritzker, was complaining about, that these governors are sending them up here without notifying us so that we can prepare for them.
Yeah. It all comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, is that our first priority as citizens is to defend liberty. And not just for ourselves, but for future generations as well. And we are not doing that today. We're increasing the size of the government, giving the government increasing power. And that power is not like you bought some power off the shelf. That power comes from somewhere, and it comes from the people. So either the people are invested with more power or the government is. And as that shifts to the government, it becomes, frankly, it becomes frightening. And we're really in the middle of that now. And immigration, increasing immigration like this at a time like this is not the thing to do. Especially since a lot of these people come over and the Democrats have been welcomed in, so they just automatically like the Democrat Party. And the people that are here, even those that vote, are saying, well, the Democrats support us because they let all immigrants in, and some of the people voting came in that way. I think it really comes down to have to think about, why did you come here? America isn't just economically successful because of our economy or our resources. America is economically successful because of our form of government and our system.
Our democracy?
Democratic republic, yes.
Yeah.
So,
So, if you want to hear more like today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the editorial staff on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any of the common sense response to progressive narrative. Find us on Facebook. Find us on YouTube. In addition to subscribing to our content, please help us out by sharing our episodes and other content on your favorite social media so that we can continue to spread the common sense response to the progressive narrative. The editorial staff is a project of the McHenry County Response. Be sure to check out McHenryCountyResponse.com and find us on Facebook. When you go to McHenryCountyResponse.com, in the top right-hand corner, you can click to subscribe to our email list. And you can we're not going to flood your inbox, but you can get some of our important updates, important stories, and things like that sent right to your inbox so you don't miss out.
We should mention that we are sponsored by Guns and Such.
Yes.
If you want to mention about Guns and Such.
Yes, Guns and Such is in McHenry. We are a gun shop. We also do concealed carry classes, NRA basic pistol classes, and we will soon be opening a shooting range right here on 120, where the former CY Armory building. So check us out on, look us up online, gunsandsuch.com. We're also sponsored by Rich Publicity.
Rich Publicity provides content-driven marketing, although more recently I've moved to writing books, books that I think need to be written, need to be read. This is a book for teens, read by teens of all ages, but it's written for teens. But a great-grandfather shares his experiences in the U.S. Navy in World War II with his great-grandson. We are also sponsored by 3-Step Internet. Ken Nicholson is not here today. He's out in a pit crew of a road racing rally somewhere. Not sure where he went for that, but I suspect he's having fun. In any case, 3-Step Internet provides incredible internet. So if you go to richpublicity.com, you will see an example of his internet service, and actually McHenry County Response is also built by 3-Step Internet. So Ken will hopefully be here for our next podcast.
And should we tell them what our next podcast topic is going to be?
Do you know?
I think we do. We're going to be talking about the Safety Act.
Ah, yes. I should have known that. Because we have been talking about it.
If everything goes as planned, that's the next episode. So you don't want to miss out on that one.
Yeah, the Safety Act. Think about it. Making crime safer for criminals. Yeah.
So thanks for joining us today. See you next week for another common sense response to the progressive narrative with the editorial staff.
Have a great day.